So this video is just going to be me going over what I believe a site reliability engineer is, right? So what is an SRE? And I think that it's one of those things that's easily misconstrued, and it's very different from what most people would expect, right? And I believe within that we have to have a basis of understanding of where it all begins, right? And I think it's an individual who is experienced to a particular degree regarding the process of operations, right? And I think the key thing that makes them different from most other things is that they become the key person or the key team responsible for the continuity of the environment. And so you have SRE in different types of organizations and in different types of organizations of different scale. So that means that you get different types of responsibility. However, there's a cross connection between how all those things sort of interact and integrate together in the entirety of the product life cycle, I suppose, if you consider that on an annual basis, in terms of the processes that have to be undertaken in order to for the business to continue operating. And it's usually geared obviously towards SaaS-based products or a service-based product being offered to either external entities or internal entities. And what that ultimately entails performance, ensuring the service is performant, ensuring the service is functional, depending on whatever the service may be. So there'll be a service of some form, and their purpose is to ensure the continuity of that service, including not only limited to that but also performance and any ongoing maintenance, right? So that means things such as looking for errors that might occur, assisting with the design of a product depending on a particular feature that may be getting launched. And in smaller organizations, they might be responsible for more things, right? So you might have a DevOps based SRE, so they'll be responsible for the monitoring, logging. They'll be responsible for some of the operations development, including also liaisoning with other people within the company. So working with the developers for the design of the actual things that's being developed. And so it encompasses a lot of things, but I think that people that you tend to find in these roles are not your bog standard, techie or hipster, or whatever the case may be. People in these roles tend to have a particular background in computing that's very different from what most would generally consider. They tend to spend the majority of their external lives engaged in some form of technical process. They're not what you generally tend to imagine. And I imagine also that they tend to have obscure hobbies in some regard. So to me, that's what I generally consider as an SRE, and they come in different flavors as well. So all of them can generally develop, but there's a difference in terms of the level at which one engages in understanding program code, because some of them lack an ability to interact and understand some of the operational aspects, and some have an in-depth understanding in terms of the software aspect. So they can look at actual code and then use big O analysis to determine some of the factors that will be required in order to actually make that code more performant, in order to understand what the actual requirements are for the program, Whereas, for example, some SRE from an operations perspective would look more so at running the code first, and then from the code actually determine the runtime requirements based on either load testing or some of those other factors. Whereas the developer based or more centric SRE don't actually tend to focus on, for example, load testing. They don't tend to focus more so, although they have an understanding of, they don't tend to focus more so on the aspect of scalability. They have an understanding of what auto scaling might be, but they tend not to be involved much in those things. And so they are responsible for actually having an in-depth understanding of the code, right? However, so for me, small companies tend to lean more towards the systems engineering side of reliability, because they tend to have developers, and then those developers over time, as the company actually grows, because normally when you need them is when you actually have a fully functioning in production product, right? And then that fully functioning in production product has to be maintained. It has to be understood from an alternative perspective, right? It has to be sort of, people have to engage in making sure the continuity of this product is vital. There has to be some specific number of requests coming through the process. And in these environments as well, the SRE, especially in the SME, would have to be responsible for the deployment, for the backups, for a multitude of things. So there's a requirement for more sort of serverless infrastructure, which sort of makes sense, and because again there's a limited number of people who are expected to undertake and ensure the continuity of this product. And with that reduced set of people, it becomes way more difficult and way more it becomes an operational burden. So it's removing that operational burden by using SaaS or PaaS, platform as a service based components. So maybe App Engine, or just the general serverless components. Like for example, we don't really have data centers anymore, or that much. We definitely do, but the thing with the data center and things of that nature is that your service can get shut down quite quickly. There's definitely some problems there, but let's not delve too deep into that, because again, I think with the data center there's always that issue of, with the cloud-based environment, there's always that issue of how quickly the service can get terminated. Whereas in the data center you have a bit more time, so you can probably spread about 2 months maybe before a service is discontinued, etc. So that's one of the main things around that. But yeah, so that's what an SRE is to me, right? And that's what I understand that role to entail. It entails not only the technical aspect, but there's also a lot of project work. A lot of your voice has to be valued, especially in the SME. Technically, you have to be able to integrate and engage with the managers as expected. And so for me, that's why I feel that even though I've never really worked in a security perspective, I do have that mindset by undergoing the OSCP, right? It's just demonstrating my level of aptitude to be able to operate and integrate into highly technical environments and really understand it correctly, given either a good manager or given an accurate representation. Given a good manager or given the accurate representation of ownership over whatever it is that I'm responsible for looking after. Uh, um, um, is my ultimate understanding of what an SRE is and what their general roles and responsibilities are. I'm definitely more on the operations side, and I definitely think that I'd be highly suitable for a role such as that, because I do have the skill set and mainly geared towards the Linux side of it, to understand everything within an environment. But not only that, to specialize in the process of debugging in the event of an error, right? Because in SMEs you don't get that opportunity much, right? So you don't get the depending on the way that the product has been developed, you won't really have, you know, somebody to report an issue to. You have to be responsible as that type of person to be able to direct the reliability of the software and the infrastructure itself by ensuring the effectiveness of understanding what the issue is and who to direct the problem to, and also verifying the issue has been resolved, while also ensuring product continuity and service availability. There's like also the SLAs and all that type of stuff, which I've mentioned as in terms of, you know, what's sort of required and intended from an individual in that particular role.